Hello, friends. We are here to review The Real Housewives of New Jersey. I don't remember what season it is, and we're kind of doing a little bit of a catch up because this was episode 3 or 4. I don't know. Clearly, I'm unprepared, but we are going to do a little bit of a catch up, but more so of a review of this episode. As we know, with Jersey, there's these like ongoing beefs that we can kind of tie on to. That's what I like about Jersey is there's a through line throughout all the seasons. Honestly, it's one of those franchises that I would tell people to go back, and I have told people to go back and watch from season one because you kind of just see the character arc for all of these people, and the dynamics are enormous as it pertains to Jersey. I do understand that the popular critique for Jersey is, oh, we're bored with the Melissa versus Teresa and the Joe and Teresa and, the Margaret and Teresa. Like, fine. I understand that. But I do think that we're getting some interesting shakeups this season. I think that we always kind of get some interesting shakeups. So it's kind of like a two things can be true for me. Like, yes, it is kind of more of the same, but the dynamics are always just really interesting to me. And personally, I just really love me some Teresa and really enjoy seeing where she started from season one because I have been watching since season one actively live and see where she is now and see how the show has evolved around her. And that's just how I feel. So let's have a chat about it. This episode starts and Margaret is having a conversation with her husband about the fact that she's upset with Jennifer Fessler and Jackie. And so this helps us kind of, tie in the other episodes that happened before and do a recap and an update. Overall, what I'll say is it's pretty obvious that she's upset that Jen Fessler and Jackie are going to be cool with Teresa. There's obviously a discussion around whether, and I guess they're cool with, Jennifer Aiden too as a result. There's a discussion behind, whether Teresa and Jennifer Aiden are doing this to be strategic. I don't necessarily think so. I do think that it is, convenient. And I think that it helps, right? Like, I could see myself being in that situation where it's like, oh, I'm cool with Jen Fessler and I'm cool with Jackie, and there's tea there because they're obviously, more so friends with Melissa and Margaret. So that's tea. It's interesting, but I don't think that they're purposely doing it for that reason. As it pertains to Jackie being cool with Teresa, I believe in my heart of hearts that Jackie wants to be cool with Teresa. Like, we always see those flashbacks of how, Jackie was a fan of the show. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's been everywhere. Jackie was a fan of the show before she got on it, and she even went to Teresa's book signing. She has a picture with Teresa. Like, she was a fan. I don't say that to be negative. I have said it negatively when I was defending Teresa back in the day when they were beefing. But at the root of it, to the toot of it, I do feel like Jackie wants to be cool with Teresa. I think that she likes Teresa. I think that it just got off to a very rocky start, and that just kind of is what it is. And I believe that it's kind of been building up to this. And I think, I don't believe that they're at a space where they can't be cordial. Right? I don't think they're going to be the best of friends, but I think that it's good enough for them to be around each other. They've been trying to do that for a couple seasons, and it always goes wrong. So for those reasons, I don't think that that's calculated. As it pertains to Jen Fessler, and then we'll talk more about the Rachel of it all as well, because both Rachel and Margaret are upset about Jen Fessler being cool with Teresa. Jen Fessler just joined this group last year. Like, this is her second season. So I will be more inclined to agree with Margaret, and I don't typically agree with Margaret on anything, not even the weather. I will be more inclined to agree with Margaret and Rachel Fuda if, Jen Fessler had been around for a little bit longer, she had more interactions with Teresa, Teresa had done something to Jen Fessler, like something. But Jen Fessler just joined this show last season, right? So I don't see the problem with her coming in. She's never had an issue with Teresa. I don't see the problem with her coming in and forming some type of relationship with Teresa. I don't understand that. And I get that, Margaret is the type of friend to, like, if she has an issue, she's going to voice her grievances, and she wants you to share those exact same grievances to the point where she'll be like, you hate her, right? Like, what I said is true, right? Like, she always wants to bring people in, like, fight your own fight, love. And I think it's fine for her to acknowledge that Jen Fessler has talked about Louis. I think everybody has said something negative about Louis. But at the end of the day, I don't think that has anything to do with her relationship with Teresa, right? Like, in real life, if we think about it, we have friends whose partners that we don't like, right? We might talk a little bit of mess about them. So it just kind of is what it is. And I think if Jen Fessler is being honest about it, which I believe that she is, I don't think it's any secret that everybody's had something negative to say about Louis. Then I don't think that that's a big deal, right? Can you say that she was talking negatively about Teresa? Can you say that she doesn't want to be cool with Teresa? I haven't seen those receipts. So if not, then I just think it's immaterial. I don't think it's a big deal that Jim Fessler is going to be cool with Teresa. Boom. So that's kind of my update on that, but we'll keep that going as we develop. Marge's, I guess her storyline this season is going to revolve around the fact that her ex-husband just passed, and now we got some context into it a little bit later that it's been a year since he passed. I don't know if I remember receiving that news, so I was kind of confused by that. I'm kind of vaguely remembering that it was brought up at last year's reunion, but honestly, I don't remember. And that's no shade to her ex-husband or her family. I just don't necessarily care for Margaret. So when it comes to talking about things with Margaret, I tune them out quite a bit. I'm sorry, it was not intentional. I just don't. But that's kind of where we are with that. I am interested to see how that plays out in this group dynamic. I do think it's interesting though because her ex-husband has always been a very integral part to her story, obviously because her and her new husband Joe, they met through like infidelity, and I think that they were both married at the time they met or something like that. So it is an integral part, but it is also interesting, even outside of them, it's always interesting to me to see when somebody's in a relationship with somebody new and they're still kind of like mourning the death of a past partner. Obviously, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just interesting to see that dynamic between, Margaret and her current spouse, and she's talking about her old spouse. And she was talking about him before he even passed. So I just kind of wonder what is her husband's take on that. Not that it has to be negative. Like I said, I don't necessarily think that there's an issue. But also as it pertains to him specifically, he's pretty much Margaret's puppet. So I'm sure that whatever he has to say comes from Margaret. We get this meetup with Jim Fessler and Rachel. Again, very new friendship. They met on the show last season. They become, big sister, little sister, I guess. And, they've had their family commingle for Christmas and holidays and all that stuff. They talk about that. You could tell they both share emotions around that friendship fine. But obviously there is a big age difference. Rachel is literally my age. Well, she's 32. I think they said I'm 31. I just turned 31. But still, so, the way that they look at things is different. The way that they operate is different. Right? Jen Fessler said that. I think that what really got me wanting to do these reviews, because with Jersey, you kind of got to like tiptoe in. Again, I enjoy it, but I don't know. But last episode, when, Jen and Jackie really stood up to Rachel and to Margaret, that's really what got me in it. Because I'm like, okay, this is an interesting dynamic shift. And so to Jen Fessler's credit, I also don't really understand Rachel being so upset. Again, it just boils down to the fact, and Jen says that at the end of this scene, that Rachel doesn't want her to be friends with certain people, i.e. Teresa. And that's really childish. I'm trying to understand, even though I don't necessarily care for Rachel and I don't care for Margaret. I always try to at least see both sides of it, like at least understand, not necessarily agree. And I just don't see it. Even in my 31 years of living, I don't know that I've ever been affected deeply if I've had a friend that's been, cool with somebody that I don't necessarily like. I don't think it bothers me that much, especially not to the point where I'm going to cry in Rachel's case. So I have to side with Jen on that. Like, I just don't really see what the issue is. I don't know what to tell you, baby doll. In Jen Fessler's words, like, girl, it just like it's old, it's boring. In Jen Fessler's words, like, get over it, who cares? Like, it's just really not that deep. I will, because I really do want to play devil's advocate, I will say I understand the initial feeling of, okay, well, Rachel feels like Teresa came at her husband last season. All of that to me is, arguable. But she feels like Teresa has come for her husband last season and come for her husband this season. And so for Jen to sit down with somebody like that, she's hurt. She's hurt. And it's like, okay, but I feel like even if you were hurt by that, that's just a very simple conversation. It's not a friend ending conversation. It's not a tears falling down my eyes conversation. It's just like, I don't necessarily care for that, but it is what it is. And I think that it's interesting throughout all of these seasons, whatever season we're on. Teresa's always been pretty much adverse to a lot of the group. It just is what it is. And Teresa has never, in my opinion, caused such a big stir behind her friends or her allies being cool with people that she doesn't like. She hasn't made a big deal about any of them, especially like, let's think about this season. Jen's going to be coming cool with Melissa or whatever the hell. It's from what we've seen thus far, she hasn't made a big deal about it. So I just don't think it matters. I think it's very silly, but in terms of dynamics and watching it happen, I'm enjoying it. And I guess since we're here and we're doing like an update and a catch up, I don't remember the root. I always like to go back to the root. I don't remember where the root of the whole John Fuda and Teresa thing happened. I kind of felt like last season when Rachel first came in, she came in very hot, and it just felt like to me she was immediately picking sides, and as a result of her being allied with the Melissa and the Margaret, she was just against Teresa. I just don't feel like she ever had a reason to be against Teresa, and I think she was really sticking her nose into a lot of stuff that really didn't have anything to do with her. And I think Teresa responded. And when Teresa responds, again, Jen Fessler said this season, like Teresa responds and she goes below the belt. Like she tries to draw blood. Like that's how she responds. But like I kind of feel like Rachel started with her. That's just my personal opinion. And Teresa got her better than Rachel was able to get her. So Rachel's upset about that. But again, I just don't think that Teresa, I'm saying all that to say I can't find the root of where John Fuda got into it with Teresa. I just really don't know. If I'm thinking about the reunion, I think that John Fuda was really going for Louis. In terms of the private investigator of it all and the calling Margaret's son, it's all completely possible. I don't know Louis. He does seem like a weird character. I don't know that I would say off the back of my hand that I trust him, and I think I don't know. So I think anything's possible. But I'm not necessarily drawn to the story of the private investigator thing. I think that was made a much bigger deal than it needed to be made. Even when they replay the clips, the proof is right there in the pudding. He literally was having a casual conversation and said that he was friends with this private investigator, and the private investigator brought him information, and that was really turned and flipped and misconstrued, and then they took it like, oh well, Louis hired a private investigator against us. That's never what he said. That was never stated, right? And I think that the proof is also in the pudding, in that we barely talked about it at the reunion because it just was not substantive, right? Because he didn't hire a private investigator. So that stuff doesn't bother me. It just really does not. And then with the whole like him calling Margaret's son thing, that sounded weird to me too, but I don't know. I'm not invested. A, I guess because it's Margaret. B, because I thought Margaret didn't have a relationship with any of her kids and her family. So, and then I don't know. Like, I just don't think it's substantive. I think I think it's low hanging fruit, if I'm going to be honest. I think they're using it as a way to be adverse to Teresa and Louis, as opposed to just saying we don't like them. Like, that works for me so much easier. Like, I don't think that you need to make up a reason. Just say I don't like them. I thought that the party that Jennifer Aiden threw for her daughter was super cute, Olivia. I thought that it was both funny and interesting that Olivia said bitch at least 14 times within that scene, but I enjoyed it. Really, really love seeing Gia have confessionals. Somebody tweeted that she was a friend of the show. I don't know if that's official or whatever. And then, of course, we're having these debates, as we do each and every year, about Gia being in grown-ups business. Gia is grown. You know what I'm saying? And if you go back to the issue is, and I've said this on other reviews, a lot of people that watch these shows did not watch them from inception, so they don't know a lot about the history of the show. But all you have to do is look back to Lauren Manzo and how much she was involved in the show for years, and going directly against Teresa, coincidentally, right? And now Teresa's daughter is grown and she's in the tea. With that being said, I don't think it's an issue going along as well with Gia's age. I don't think it's an issue that Gia films with the group, and I also don't look at Gia as somebody that's being messy or causing drama. Like, she really is more so reasonable, way more reasonable than a lot of women in this group, if not all. So I think when people are coming up with issues around her filming and being in the conversation, again, it's just to be adverse to Teresa, and I wish that y'all would find something else to do. This is the fourth episode in a row now, third or fourth. Again, I don't remember, that Jackie has consistently brought up the fact that Danielle did not invite her to her event. I don't know, it seems like she's brought it up to everybody individually. Jackie can be very annoying to me, but it seems like, if you can't tell, seems like she brought it up to everybody, and everybody was very ignoring about it, but now she finally gets to bring it up again, and she brings it up twice this episode. This is the first time. And I wrote that down because obviously there was this discourse online when we got the sneak peek that, Jennifer had brought this lady Lena around, and she gave the story about, Danielle and that charity event and what happened there. And I brought it up because it's like, well, I don't know if that was a calculate. I do think that Jennifer does things that are calculated, but I like to break them down because everything around Jersey seems to come with a scheme. That's always a discussion because that's just kind of the tone of this show, and it has been for a very long time. But I don't know that I feel like Jennifer Aiden calculated that. One, because again, Jackie brought up the conversation, and then because Lena was there, she's brought into it. Because, like, well, you know Danielle, because they're talking about Danielle, but also because Jennifer Aiden was very transparent in her confessional and said, well, yeah, I'm allowing Lena to tell her story because she's in our friend group. She does Teresa's hair. And also, a third point, when it happened, it's not that it happened and Jennifer waited until cameras were rolling to bring this up and be messy. She says when it happened and, Lena was kicked out of this event or whatever the hell happened, she called Danielle the next day. Jennifer Aiden called Danielle the next day and said that wasn't cool, what's going on with this. She addressed her about it, and Danielle wasn't trying to have a conversation about it. So she tried to have a conversation with her off camera, didn't work out, so now she's talking about it on camera and bringing it to the group. And I don't see a problem with that. I did also think it was interesting because at this dog party, and Jennifer said that she invited Margaret and her husband, and Teresa does make the joke to call Margaret a dog, essentially. And I thought it was interesting that, well, first of all, nobody said anything, but specifically both Jackie and Jen Fessler, they didn't say anything at all. So I thought that was interesting. Speaking of interesting, last episode we got this really touching like montage of Gabriella going away to school, and Gabriella is the least outgoing camera-wise, show-wise, amongst the four of those daughters. I would say she's always pretty much way more low-key, which is not a problem. I'm just saying, like, we don't typically see so much of her. So when I got to see that little like tribute video they did to her going away from college, I'm like, oh, that's really touching. Again, because I've been there through day one. Like, I've watched it all kind of happen and unfold, and it's crazy that she's going to college now. But I also was like, it is interesting to see the parallel of her going to college and Antonia going to college, them being cousins, their families not getting along. But I was just like, what type of send away are we giving Gabriella versus Antonia? And I say versus as like a comparison, not necessarily as a like whose is better type of thing. So Gabriella's was really nice, but I'm like, dang, like we didn't really get that much on Antonia last episode. We did get it for Antonia this episode, and I kind of like that they separated it and gave them each their own episodes and each their own moments. That's really my only point for that. But I will be honest and say it does kind of feel like Joe and Melissa's kids don't get as much of a story as Teresa's kids necessarily do. And I don't know what that's rooted in. I think maybe Teresa's personal story has always just revolved a lot around her kids, or she's involved her kids a lot. I think. I don't know. She talks about her kids a lot. That's not to say that Melissa doesn't. I think that Melissa has had a lot of other stuff going on, like her store and her music career and, just other and beefing with Teresa, which has been her storyline basically since she started. So I don't think that we've gotten a lot of attention to her kids. Whereas with Teresa, she kind of involves her kids in stuff all the time. And again, they kind of film and do confessionals and stuff like that. So maybe that's the difference, but I don't know. And when Danielle started last season, I figured that, her storyline kind of felt like a Teresa-ish storyline. Not that it was about Teresa, meaning like it's parallel Teresa because it's very family-driven, which I think is also interesting. And she's had this riff with her brother, and now she has this riff with her dad because she feels like her dad didn't really defend her. So I am interested to see where that goes. It feels a little stale now, even though it's only the second season that we're talking about it, because it seems like she alludes to it a lot, but we don't get a lot of information. And last season, I was more so on her side because she was bringing up the riff with her brother, and the ladies were saying like, well, I feel like you're hiding something. We're not getting any info. And I'm like, girl, like, she just got here. Let her get it out. But now we're on season 2, and I feel like she's alluding to the stuff again, and she's not giving any context, and that's kind of frustrating me as well. So I'm interested to see where that goes. I'm also not sure I'm feeling Danielle this season. I don't know if it's I'm going to be honest. I try not to be biased on a lot of my reviews, but I'm very biased on this one. Like, I'm 100% team Teresa. I don't really care for Margaret. I do not care for Rachel Fuda. And the fact that Danielle, and I don't know the root of it, I guess it's going to come out during this season. It just seems like Danielle's in a weird place from like the sneak peeks and stuff that we've been getting and the little stuff that they talked about while they were filming and after filming. Seems like she's on the outs with definitely Jennifer Aiden, but maybe Teresa as well. And that already kind of turns me off. So again, because I'm biased, I'm being honest. So I'm kind of looking at her like this already. And so I say that to say they get to Dolores's baseball event, which is in Coney Island, which I've been wanting to go to, but I don't know. I never get there, but I want to go. But anywho, so she asks Jackie, like, girl, how did you get invited to the puppy party? And it's like, you don't even talk to her, and that's not even any of your business because you weren't even there. Like and the conversation was initiated between she and Margaret. So I'm like, not having a messy conversation with messy Margaret. Like, ugh. Jackie's like, me and Jennifer are friends, girl. The only person I'm not friends with is you. And now, for the 45th time that Jackie has brought this up, she gets to, direct it to Danielle directly. And she says, girl, you didn't invite me to your function. And Margaret jumps in. And she's like, well, you can't really be mad because you guys are not close and blah, blah, blah. And Jackie clocks some good tea, I think. Like, Margaret never actually sticks up for Jackie. I think that in the past, Margaret has aligned herself with Jackie because Jackie was against Teresa. If you ask my personal opinion, I've never really seen Margaret and Jackie form what I would call a substantive friendship or relationship. And obviously stuff can happen off camera or whatever, but I think it was just kind of like an alliance of like convenience because they both hated Teresa. And so Margaret, I just don't see any time that she's ever really stuck up for Jackie and had Jackie's best interest. And even that aside, I don't know why she would be jumping into something between Jackie and Danielle and refuting Jackie's point, especially if Jackie's supposed to be her friend. And Danielle is not even somebody that Margaret was necessarily kind to last season, right? So it's a very weird stance for a lot of those reasons, and because I just really don't like Margaret. And Margaret always seems to pull things out of her ass, and she just really, like, Margaret is like the most petty person I've ever seen in my life. And she's just like, well, Jackie, what have you ever done for me? And it's like, girl, what do you mean? Like, what have you ever done for Jackie? Like, what are you talking about? And it's like, it's almost like Margaret just brings these things up to affirm her point. It's confirmation bias at all times, and it never really means anything. She's starting up this issue just to be able to bring up a point that you're being cool with Teresa now, and that's my problem. That's essentially what it is. It's nothing else. But she starts talking about this stupid book thing and the fact that Jackie hasn't sent her the book. That's so petty. She's like, well, girl, you already let, so-and-so read it, and Melissa read it, and Melissa doesn't even read books, and all this other stupid junk. And then Jackie's like, girl, my mom hasn't even read the book. And if this isn't telling enough about Margaret's personality and what type of person she is, she's like, well, that's not surprising. Like, first of all, how is Margaret Josephs going to take a dig at anybody's family dynamics when you don't have any relationship with any of your family? They don't even like you. And luckily for you, of all the seasons that you've been on this show, we've never had to dig into it because I feel like that's the real tea. We've never dug into Margaret's real tea. Why her family hates her, what's going on with her finances, why they've been renovating that house for 8 seasons, why she cheated on her husband, and why she's still talking about her ex-husband. Like, we've never dove into those things. We know them because they're little tidbits, but for whatever reason, Margaret has always been saved from the real tea. So if that's somebody that's supposed to be your friend and you're going to take a dig like that, like, oh, I'm not surprised that your mom hasn't read your book, how dare you, girl? Like, come on now, be for real. So that, honestly, alone for me, if I were Jackie Goldschneider, I would never rock with Margaret again. Cause, girl, I know you're lying. I saw a lot about this on Instagram and Twitter, and I did also make a personal note that I appreciated. When Melissa and Joe came in, obviously they walked right past Teresa, but Melissa did tell her son to go and, kiss and speak to her aunt. And I appreciated that. Of course, you start to get these comparisons like, well, Teresa doesn't do that with her kids. But there was a direct conflict between Gia, Melissa, and Joe last season, both during the season and at the reunion. And again, Gia is an adult, right? She's kind of at the forefront of the child, like the nieces thing with their uncle. She always has been. And so if she chooses not to speak to her uncle, then I don't see a problem with that. Whereas Melissa's son he's a child. So yeah, go. And we don't see him in the tea. He might be more in the tea, but we don't see it. So he ain't in the tea. Go speak to your aunt and keep it moving. Put your jersey on. I did also like seeing, I like to see the parallels between the franchises. So it was nice hearing Dolores say that she was playing for the benefit of Gertie from the Real Housewives of Miami for this game. I thought that was cool because I don't know that I knew that they were friends. And just like, for me, it wasn't a lot of tea at this game, but obviously we get to see Margaret approach Jen Fessler. Even though they talked that episode prior and Jen really handed her ass to her, we get to see them have another conversation. And I mean, Jen Fessler really kind of reiterates what she was saying. She's she's told both Rachel and Margaret together and separately, and she keeps repeating the same thing. And she really is just clocking the tea that she's not Margaret's soldier, right? As she said in the episode before. She's like, I don't handle things like you do. Teresa hasn't done anything to me, and I just don't see a big deal that I'm going to be cordial and cool with Teresa. And Margaret really just doesn't have anything to say, and you can really see Margaret floundering this season, right? You're going to beef with Jackie, and you're going to beef with Jen Fessler, right? And I know that her and Jen Fessler are cool now because Jen Fessler just did an interview. So cool, they're still cool, but it's just like, are you ever going to have any friends on the show? Because I'm not noticing that you do. And then also, Melissa and Jen, this is a point where they, decide that they're going to meet up and have a conversation. Again, the rooter to the tutor, I don't necessarily know what their issue would have been. I do know that, Jen is very opinionated. And so when, Melissa and Teresa have beef, she'll give her opinion about that. And when Joe and Teresa have beef, she'll give her opinion about that. And I think that Joe and Melissa just ended up getting upset, A, because she's aligned to Teresa, so they can't like her. And then because she's giving her opinions about Joe being a B boy, right? And so a bitch boy. And so I think that that's kind of where it stems from, is her issues with Joe, not necessarily with Melissa. I don't think that she and Melissa have issues. So similarly to what I was saying earlier, I don't think that I would have a problem if Jen decided she wants to be cool with Melissa. I don't like Melissa, but if she wants to be cool with Melissa, I don't think I see an issue with that. So all that being said, I think that we've summed up all the beefs that are happening so far, and I think we've done a quick little catch up. This episode was a little bit lighter, so it was easy to be able to do that. And I think that I got to be able to get into all the dynamics like I really wanted to. I hope I didn't miss anything. It's my first video back in a while, so I'm a little bit rusty, but I am enjoying this season. Again, I do think that it's popular opinion to say like, oh, we don't like it. It's the same old, same old. And I think that it's a continuous story, and I think that that's something that a lot of shows miss. But I think it's a continuous story, and we get a lot of the same actors in these situations, and the dynamic shifts. So for me, that's interesting. Does it tend to lack sometimes? Absolutely. But I don't think that the problem is that we get this through line of like a Teresa and a Melissa beef. I think that is nice that we're branching off now. We get to see other things, and we're not focused on the Melissa versus Teresa / Joe. But it is nice to see the dynamics. To me, I don't mind it. So I'm interested to see where we go from here, and I will see y'all in the next one.